Hello and welcome to today's Monday at 8. It is Monday, the 27th of March, and yesterday Mandy was looking at the story of Zacchaeus from Luke chapter 19. I'm just going to hang on for a few more minutes, well, not a few more minutes, a few more seconds, just to give other people a chance to join us, as it's only just literally turned 8 o'clock. So Luke chapter 19 and the story of Zacchaeus, as we continue our series on encounters with Jesus. I see there's a few of you have joined. Hi Sue, and if there's anyone else who has joined who's able to join on the chat, then feel free to do that at the bottom. So I've had no questions by email, no questions by WhatsApp, and no questions here in the YouTube chat. Obviously, I've got a couple of things. Now, where did I put them? I listened to Mandy's sermon earlier on, and when I put that on the website, so if you didn't see it, you can go and find it there. All right, let's stick my phone there and I can keep an eye on it, although it's going to slide over, I think. Right, okay, so let's make a start. So if you've got any questions at any point, then do either drop them in the chat ideally, or you could email them and I'll check the email before I finish. Just a couple of things that I thought, and then kind of one thing that I'll pick up from what Mandy said. I think it's interesting that this passage comes so close to the one we looked at. Was it last week or the week before? Last week, the rich young ruler, chapter 18, verses 18 to 30, and this is just at the beginning of chapter 9. Obviously, both rich men, but and Mandy drew out the contrast between the two very well at the beginning of her sermon yesterday. But having just said that it's impossible for the rich to enter the kingdom of heaven, and now we find a rich man doing just that. But as Mandy drew out yesterday, this is very much the work of God. It's not that with man it's impossible, but with God all things are possible, and God is able to do amazing things in Zacchaeus's life. Jesus wants to stay at his house, and the people begin to mutter. I think until we that might not seem that kind of a drastic a step to us, but obviously within the Jewish culture of the first century, this man would have been considered to be unclean. He would have regularly interacted with Gentiles, and his bosses would have been the Romans. And so he would have been considered unclean. And for Jesus to go into his house was a big no-no, something that we see beginning to unfold, or not unfold, break down, unfurl, maybe, in later on in the book of Acts with Peter's visit to Cornelius. So going to stay in the house of someone who wasn't a faithful Jew, and because that had all sorts of implications for their ritual purity. So that's significant. And then Mandy talked a little bit about the Son of Man and a link to Ezekiel 34. So I went to have a look at Ezekiel 34, and if you've never read Ezekiel 34, before I would recommend that you go and do that. Have a look at Ezekiel chapter 34. Hi, Mary. And I mean, I just went through and had a look at all the things that God says that he will do. And it's a really great chapter to have a look at. So I will search for my sheep. I will look after them. I will rescue them. I'll bring them out. I will bring them out. I will give them pasture. I will tend them. I will tend my sheep. I will search for the lost. I'll bind up the injured. I will shepherd the flock with justice, and so on and so on. So it's a really good, if you've got a spare 10, 20 minutes or so at some point this week, go and have a look at Ezekiel chapter 34. Read the whole thing through and just take some time reflecting on what it's saying and what it's saying about God. And also, as you read this Ezekiel chapter 34, just have that in the back of your mind when you come to those passages that kind of Mandy touched on very briefly yesterday. So the parable of the lost sheep, Jesus, I am the good shepherd. There's a bit in here where it talks about, where was it now? I will judge between the sheep, one sheep and another, between the rams and the goats. And kind of that took my mind to Matthew 25 with the parable of the sheep and the goats. And so I was thinking, so when I was at Bible college, so back in 1999 to 2001-ish, up until the not too distant past, the main approach seemed to be within academic scholarship, when people looked at the Bible, was that very much taking the view that the closer you are to the 20th century, the more intelligent you are. And therefore, the people in the 20th century were more intelligent than the people in the 19th century, more intelligent, blah, 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 blah. And so didn't really give a lot of credit to people in the first century and way back before then, sort of 500, 600, 700 years before that. And in terms of biblical authors, didn't really give them amazing amounts of credit. They would look at stories where there's one story here and there's a very similar story here and think, oh, they just obviously didn't realize that there were two similar stories so close together, and they just patched it all together and blah, 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 blah. But by the time, so that was kind of scholarship back a bit. But over the years, I think scholars have become to appreciate the art of biblical literature, and recognize how carefully these things are crafted. They're not just thrown together, which is one of the reasons why we are to meditate on it, because it is not just chucked together randomly. It is very carefully written. So you might well ask, when Jesus says in Luke 19 verse 10, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost, would your mind go to Ezekiel 34, or should your mind go to Ezekiel 34? I think, as Mandy's mind did, I think the answer is almost certainly yes, it should. I did a quick search using stepbible.org on my phone, and there were, now what was it now? I did a search on one on the NIV, then I did a search in the English Standard Version and got slightly different. On the phrase "the Son of Man" or "Son of Man," comes up about, I think off the top of my head, it was something like 189 times in the Bible. I've got in the NIV, it's 96 of them are in the Old Testament, and of those 96, 93 of them are in Ezekiel. I think in the English Standard Version, which is probably slightly better for doing this sort of thing, I think it was 107 in the Old Testament, of which 93 are in Ezekiel. So by far, Ezekiel, so yeah, 93 out of 107 mentions of the Son of Man are in Ezekiel. So when you hear the phrase the Son of Man, which Jesus uses multiple times in the Gospels, I mean, 82 times in the New Testament altogether, the bulk of those, so apart from a handful, the bulk of those are in the Gospels. So Jesus, this is the title that Jesus uses for himself. The history of that almost certainly would have taken people back to the reference in Daniel, but also the references in Ezekiel. And then if you look and do an Old Testament search on lost, where's it gone? I just lost it. And I'm in Ezekiel. I'm supposed to be in, not in Ezekiel. I wanted to be in Luke. Luke 19. So the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. You look at that word lost, and there are, I didn't actually write this down anywhere, there are a few references in that coincide. And so I think almost certainly our mind is supposed to go to Ezekiel 34 when we read that the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost, and the references to the false shepherds and all the things that God will do. Ezekiel 34, all the things that God will do as he searches for his lost sheep. And then again, all the references of when Jesus is then talking about, I am the shepherd, etc., etc., etc. How are we doing? That's 12 minutes past. There's still no questions here in the live chat. There are more of you there than are saying hi. Let me have a look in the emails just to check there's nothing in email. No, nothing coming on email, nothing in WhatsApp. Yep. So I do think, I mean, I've mentioned this a number of times recently, and I think this is something that the Bible Project flag up on a consistent basis of how these rabbit holes, so that one mention of something somewhere is it's deliberate, it's intentional, it is supposed to send us somewhere else. That somewhere else may well send us somewhere else, and that may send us somewhere else again. But we're not supposed to speed read the Bible. We're supposed to meditate on it. We're supposed to read it slowly. We're supposed to think about it. We're supposed to reflect on it. It's a lifetime's journey. And so if we're getting through Luke and it sends us into Ezekiel, then, I mean, it takes a while to read the whole of Ezekiel if you wanted to do that. I mean, like, I've recently come to the end of Psalms, but that was kind of several months worth of time just working slowly through the Psalms. But it's as a lifetime's journey. It's not something that needs to be over in 5 minutes. It's not a race. And so depending on where God takes us as we meditate on his word, bit by bit, we will get there, and it will all begin. And it gets, I mean, I think it's quite exciting when you're reading something and you begin to see the links for yourself without needing to be told. Oh, that reminds me of something I read there, or that reminds me of something I read here. And so the better, the more we read, the more time we spend reading, the better we will get at recognizing these kind of links that the authors almost certainly had in mind when they wrote these things. Right. I'll call it a day there. Thank you for joining me. I think this is probably going to be our last one for several weeks, because next week there won't be one because it's after the 4 o'clock service. Then it's the one after Easter Sunday, and then I'm away. And so I think the next one will probably be the 24th of May. No, 24th of April. 24th of April. But if you have any questions in the meantime, then do just email them across, and any questions that come over the next few weeks, we can look at when we meet on the 24th of April. I will see you then. Okay, bye.